Welcome to the Think Generational Wealth Podcast, episode 29, and I'm your host, Amir Estimo. In today's episode, we have a very, very great episode for you today. The title of the show is 7 Tips on How to Pay Off Debt in 2021 and Gain Financial Prosperity. Again, 7 tips on how to pay off debt in 2021 and gain financial prosperity. The reason I wanted to do this episode because last year in 2020, me and my wife, we started the year off probably close to maybe even $10,000 worth of debt, credit card debt, might tell you. And we actually probably even between some other debt we had, probably say $25,000 or so, close to 26 of debt. So our goal that year in 2020 was to pay off all our credit card debt. Now we do own a timeshare that we still owe on, and that's our goal this year, is to pay off the timeshare. And I know a lot of people, especially 2020, dealt with a lot of heartache, dealt with a lot of financial issues, especially here in the States. And it's one of those topics people don't like to discuss. So for me, as I say in past episodes, this podcast is the Journey Podcast. So you will get an opportunity to listen to the process of building generational wealth and the steps taken. And for me, it's like a journal, writing in a journal, but sharing it with the world. So as I said, 2020, we had about $25,000 worth of debt. If I'm including student loans, we're probably even higher than that. But the main focus that year was to pay off credit card debt. Now, before I continue with the show, do me a favor. If you're listening to this on Apple, especially on Apple, Spotify, on Apple, hit that purple app. Subscribe to the show if you like the content. You will get this content every week, every Friday. That's my goal for 2021, is to record 52 episodes and also bring on some guests. I'm working on a couple of guests to bring on in the next maybe few weeks or a month that also can share their journey of building generational wealth. So, as I say, hit that purple app, subscribe to the episode, rate and review, whether you're on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. Help to grow the show and share the word if you enjoy the content. And I do appreciate, I always like to start the show off, I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to this podcast. You could be doing anything in the world, but the fact that you're listening to this podcast is much appreciative. As many podcasts there is out there today, probably over 1 million podcasts right now that started. I feel you taking hopefully whatever value I bring to the show, I'm not just bringing in some value that you can take and actually put into action. So let's begin. So I think the first thing we did, I know for me and my wife, was we had to come to grips of our debt. And I think a lot of people are so scared to do that because it is such a uncomfortable topic, because when you're building up all this debt, and I'm not talking about good. Now, there's bad debt and there's good debt. Good debt is like real estate. So if you own real estate, you own an asset, and let's say you're renting it out, whether it's commercial properties, on apartment buildings, owning homes, you have renters in there that's paying your mortgage. That's actually a good debt. A bad debt would be like credit card, student loans, timeshare, anything I mentioned earlier. Anything that's taking money out of your pocket is bad debt. anything that's putting money in your pocket is good debt. Okay. You have to first come to grips of what you owe. Just face it. Don't even sugarcoat it. Just face it. Come to grips that, man, I've acquired all this debt, because debt is not something that you acquire instantly. It happens throughout years and years and years. And it gets to a point, it gets out of hand if you don't pay attention to it. If you don't really practice self-control and really discipline yourself, you can easily find your debt and way in the highs and really to the point where it's just out of control and you owe a lot of money. So, and you got to think, if you owe, let's say, $100,000, or let's even be realistic. Let's say you owe $50,000 and your income, and let's say you're bringing in $2,000 to $3,000 a month, but your debt is like $4,000 to $5,000 a month. You're actually in the negative. It's really hurting you. So the first thing you got to do is take a look at your debt and be honest with yourself and say, you know what? I've acquired all this debt. Now it's time for me to put my big boy or big girl pants on and pay this debt down, because you cannot build generational wealth. You cannot build generational wealth strategically if you don't get rid of the things that's going to hold you back. Now, as I shared with you earlier in the episode, I myself, we have debt, and we still have debt to this day. And I'm not going to sit here in front and be like, oh, well, now my debt is zero balance. But I can honestly tell you now, we are more disciplined, and we've practiced more self-control than ever, because we don't want to go back to owing a lot of credit card debt. Now, that thing that I don't know if any of you guys ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert Kiyosaki talks about how when you have a job and you get a new job, like we acquired this debt throughout the years, is because we bought, I got a new job, then making more money, and then all suddenly went and bought a house, bought new furniture, bought all these things. You got all this new stuff, but then you got to pay it back. And me not being educated, really educated, I mean, I can tell you I'm educated now more than ever about debt, but in the past I was not. I was in that mindset of when you get a credit card, you just use it, rack it up. Didn't understand how credit usage works and how the credit score works and all this stuff's factor in. So I think the first thing you got to do is take a look at your debt and just be honest. Okay, I've acquired all this debt. The next question is, a lot of people say, well, how am I going to pay it off? That's the thing that a lot of people get stuck on, is that they don't understand. They don't put a plan in place of how to pay this debt down. So I hope these tips that I share with you, tip number 1 so far is take a look. These tips that I share with you, that you can actually take it and implement it right away. So tip number 1, take a look at your debt and be honest with yourself. Tip number 2, get yourself organized. Now, there's all sorts of tools out there. I use Mint. I use Excel. I built myself an Excel file, an Excel sheet, where I can just actually put all the stuff in. And I have, I'm in IT, so I've done a lot of kind of coding in Excel, and it can spit to me. And Excel actually has tools already that you can just put in that can help you with budgeting yourself and check, taking a look at your expenses. Now, before I tell you this, I'm not affiliated with any of this, so it's not like I get any kind of commission or anything like that to that nature. It's just me sharing the tools that I've used to help me bring down debt. So I get yourself organized. That's the second tip I would honestly say. Get yourself organized. Like I said, there's Mint. You can use the Mint app, which is a great tool. You can connect it to your bank. I know some people are very iffy about that, but trust me, it works for me. And I'm one of those people. I'm just like that. Like, I'm very uncomfortable with putting my bank information. Like, I won't even save my Google passwords because I'm so iffy about it, because all the scams and you hear all these horror stories. Like, I never want to be dealing with that on the other end, right? So Mint, I use the app Mint. So if you get it, take a look at Mint. It can connect to your bank, pull all the information in Mint. You can actually set budget in Mint. Excel, you can actually pull all your information from Excel if you want to manually type it in. What I do is some of my banks, you can actually just download it and download the information and import it into Excel, and you can do it that way, and set it up however works for you. And what I do is every Friday I take a look at my Mint and I say, okay, I set myself a calendar and I time block, and I say from this 30 minutes I'm going to review, look at our expenses. But like for me, who has several banks, so I have Mint connected to several. So if I'm using a card like at one bank versus another, Mint, instead of me having to just go in there and do all this looking around, I can just actually go into Mint, see all the expenses, and then you can put them into category. So if you like to see the tool that I use, you can hit me up at thinkgenwealth@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to share that with you. Okay. Third, budget yourself. You're really going to have to budget yourself and stick to it. A lot of people realize this was one of the things that helped us pay down $10,000 worth of credit card debt in 2020. What a lot of people don't realize is they don't have a budget. Like me and my wife, we budget ourselves from groceries to we budget ourselves to our fuel. And with COVID hitting and last year not driving as much, one thing that's really helped is our fuel expense have actually went down. Between me and my wife, we were probably spending about $250 a month, $250, $300, close to a month, because she works, I work, going to the office, etc. But since I've been working from home, this has actually helped because now I don't have to drive as much, so our fuel expense is down. But budgeting yourself is big because if you don't have a budget, you don't have something to keep you disciplined, you're going to go out of control and just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Okay. Tip number 4. Now, you have to figure out how do you want to pay this debt. Now, there's 2 types of ways you can pay debt, right? Now, there's the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. This is a term, I'm not sure if he coined it, but I'm just going to probably give him credit for it. It's Dave Ramsey. And if you do want to be educated and learn about how debt works and all this, you can take a look at his book. I think it's called Total Money Makeover or something. It's one of those books by Dave Ramsey. Now, he talks about the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. Now, the debt snowball, okay. The debt snowball is once you get all your debt together, okay, then you make the minimum payments on all your debt. Now you start basically with the lowest debt. So let's say if you have $10,000, again, I'm gonna use this now, $10,000 of credit card debt. Now that's total credit card debt, right? And okay, so let's say you owe $500 on a credit card, $1,000 here, $2,000 there, etc., right? You would start off and pay off the $500 first. You pay the minimum on all the other credit cards that you owe, depending on what you have. You start with the smallest debt first and then work your way to the highest debt, which is what we're doing now. Our highest debt was our timeshare. So we are paying our timeshare last right now. Okay. We start off with the smallest debt first. So that's the snowball. You want to start, you pay minimum all the other ones. You start with the smallest debt and you work your way to the highest debt. Okay. Now you have the avalanche, right? So the avalanche is when same concept, you pay all the minimum on all your cards, except the card with the highest interest or, debt with the highest interest is what you will pay first. So then what you do is, again, you pay all these minimum on all the other ones. And then the one with the highest is what you're going to put and you're going to focus. The highest credit is what you're then going to use, is what you're going to pay first. And then you work your way opposite. So you start with the highest and then you go all the way to your lowest, right? Okay. Now it's up to you to figure out what works for you. Okay. Is it the snowball or the avalanche? For us, we went with the avalanche. We went to snowball. So we started off paying off a smaller debt, knock those out, and then budgeting ourselves. Remember, you got to budget yourself. And then we worked our way all the way to now where we're only paying our timeshare. And our goal is to pay that off. Okay. And then once we pay that off, and my goal then in 2022 is I have student loan debt still, is to pay off the student loan debt. Okay. But just to give you an idea of how you can do it, you can pay down debt if you really put the focus and the attention span and really discipline yourself. Those, I can honestly say, if you don't have any of those three things, it will be hard for you to do that. And then you have to not only be disciplined, you got to continue, because like for me, I don't like care. I have credit cards, and I'm not going to sit here and say I don't. I do. Some of them I had to cancel. Once I paid them up, cancel. I don't even worry about them. Now, some of them I didn't. Some of them I just don't use, period. The only reason I do that is you want to keep your credit limits, not your credit limit, but your credit high. So let's say if you have 5 credit cards, each credit card has $10,000 credit limit. That's $50,000. What helps your credit score is your credit usage. So let's say if you have let's say $3,000 worth of debt, your actual credit usage, I can't do the math right now, but if you're a math whiz, I'm pretty sure you can do that in your head or whatever. But your credit usage will be really low. So compared to, and also what helps is your credit history. Now, by me saying that is keeping your credit usage low. Now, if let's say you owe, that's, now you had your credit limit is 30,000, but you owe 3,000. Your credit usage is going to be higher. Your percentage credit usage is going to be higher. So even if you do pay those credit cards, let's say you have multiple credit cards or whatever, you have debt, I would still highly suggest keeping those cards unless it's just something that does not help you. But it does help you overall because it helps your credit usage. So the higher you have credit limits, so again, if you have 5 and it's all each $10,000, that's $50,000. But if you cut 2 of those cards off, that drops you down to 30. And if you were to do the math or whatever, that actually increases your credit usage percentage. So that's why it's probably imperative to, once you pay that debt, one thing I did was I just went and stored somewhere, and I just don't even worry about it. Because I don't have no usage, and these are cards I don't have any usage for anyways, but it helps because it keeps my credit usage percentage down. So those are factors that affects your credit score, overall credit score. Is your credit history. So let's say you had a credit card, right? I had one, and I think 2 of them, they're about, I want to say 3 or 4 years old now. So if I were to cut that off, and let's say the rest of my cards are probably about, maybe you got maybe one that's 2, one that's 6. That hurts your history, your credit history, because now your age of credit drops. So when you cancel those cards, let's say especially if you had them a while, it's probably just best to just keep them. And if anything, maybe just charge, like, just to keep them active. Maybe just put charge, something like $10 that you're just going to pay off right away, because you don't want to, get back into that debt, that mindset of, I charge and pay later. Just use $5, pay. Maybe you use it maybe once every 2-3 months, something like that. And just to keep it active, because eventually what the credit card company is going to do is when they don't see you. Now, some of them are slick. Some of them will come in and say, okay, we haven't seen this person use their card in a while. We'll offer them a credit, we'll offer them a credit increase. Or most of the time, they'll just send you a letter and say, because you haven't used this card in a while, we're going to cut your account. Now, if that happens, just go in there and charge maybe a couple of bucks on there just to keep it active. Because again, it helps your credit percentage and your credit history. Okay. Now you gotta see what method works for you, whether it's the avalanche or the snowball. The snowball was something that worked for us, me and my wife. For you, it may be different, but it's for you. That's why I say step one is to analyze and be honest with yourself, and just really just have that candid conversation with yourself, and budget and stick to it. Okay. Now, if you cannot pay your debt, I would recommend Debt America. If you're here in the States, I'm not sure overseas what program is, because I'm pretty sure this is being heard overseas too. But I'm pretty sure if you just Google, you probably can find something. Find some type of debt relief program that can help you consolidate all your debt, and then you'll just make one monthly payment and then all these payments will be made to, you could do it that way. But there's some things to that nature to where, I don't want to get too into this, but I would highly suggest maybe if you can't pay your debt the way, whether those previous two methods that I mentioned, you want to look into Debt America or Empowering America. Any of those two companies will be able to help you be able to just consolidate all your debt. Now, again, there's some things to that nature that you still need to find out. I would do some more research, but I'm only saying that is if this is like an option to where maybe you lost your job or something, you hit hard times financially. You want to be able to look into these programs, and it'll help you. And I think there's even some credit counselors that can help you with debt, which brings me to my point 6, educate yourself. Okay. You got to educate yourself. If you don't educate yourself, don't leave education to someone else to educate. It's you who have to educate. You got to understand how credit works. You got to understand what not to do. You got to understand the habits of people. When they say that people spend more money when they have a credit card, because why? Is because when you have a credit card, you're not thinking, like, if you were to compare credit to cash, right? Cash, you have $100 in your hand. You're like, oh, okay, I can just go and spend. If I spend $10, now I'm down to 90, right? Whereas credit, you can have $10,000 and automatically you're like, that's $10,000. For me, I don't think that way. For me, it's like, if I have $100 in my pocket, I look at it as like, I can only spend, if I'm going to pay, like, I use my credit cards, and I'm guilty of this. I chase points sometimes, meaning that I don't use my debit card at all, because I feel very, like, again, I'm very picky about my debit card information being out there. But I don't mind my credit card, because it's easier in a sense to get your credit fixed, like your credit card. If you use your credit card and something happened, you can get that versus your debit, especially when it's money that you need right away. So I use my credit card for everything, and I gain points, right? So that's me. But educate yourself. If you don't educate yourself, it will be difficult for you to continue this journey of paying off debt, right? And then, excuse me. And then step number 7, do not add any more debt. Let me repeat this again, folks. Do not add any more debt at all. If you can't pay cash for it, don't buy it. Now, for me, what I do with my credit card is I'll put all my transactions, my things on there. But what I do, again, that goes to budgeting, right? So I have a budget, $300. If I say, okay, I can use, that's money in the bank. If I spend $250, I know as soon as the end of the week, I pay that off. I don't let it linger. I pay it off. I carry zero balances from month to month, right? I have not applied except for a house. Now, if you want to buy a house, of course, you're going to have to apply for and all that other stuff, right? Or even a car. If you need a new car, you'll have to pay for a loan. But a car, you can even pay for that cash. You can get yourself a used car. You can, if it really gets to that point where you have to make payments, then it is what it is, right? But do not add, don't go applying for any more credit cards. Don't sit there and buy stuff you don't need to impress people who don't care about you because you want to be able to keep up with the Joneses, okay? So I would highly advise you, highly advise you, do not add any more debt, especially if you cannot handle the ones you got now. So think about that. Let that sink in for a minute. Once you pay your debt, don't go buy stuff you don't need. Then you can take that money that you're using the debt, roll it over and start saving money and building wealth. And that's what we're doing right now. I'm not worried about the timeshare because I know eventually we're going to pay that off. And I'm not going to put all my energy into paying a timeshare. But what I'm saying is I'm putting down my energy in saving money. We have a goal this year of what we need to save as a couple. That's going to be our focus. So you got to think on this journey to building generational wealth, right? Your assets, people don't think about it, but your bank account is an asset. What's in your checking account is an asset, okay? Because if you die right now and you have $10,000, that's $10,000 added to your net worth. But if you owe $20,000, your net worth is 10, now you're in the negative. If you owe 10, your net worth is 10, you're in the zero. But if you owe 10, if you have $10,000 saved up, and let's say you have $1,000 of debt, that's $9,000 to your net worth, okay? Now there's there's another app that I use. This is just a bonus. Another app that I use to help me with saving money is Trans Alpha, Betterment. It's called Betterment. If you want to find out more information, check it out. But what I do is I set that and automate it, set it and forget it. When I get paid, I see it goes into that account. It's sort of kind of like investing in stocks and bonds and that type of stuff. But it's money that I look at as for retirement. And I say I'm not touching that money, period. So as this money is coming into the account every single month, I don't even I check it once a month just to see because you do get dividends and you do get paid, you get some money. Your money does grow with interest, right? But I would highly advise you get with a financial advisor. And the one thing last year, my financial advisor, we sat down and looked, and she said, we're like, yeah, we paid all our debt, all our credit card debt. She said, oh my gosh, you pay $10,000 worth of credit card debt, and we did that in 8 months, I think it was. And she was impressed, you know. And then so you got to do this because it's something you want to do. Okay. Now let me review this again. 7 tips on how to pay off debt in 2021 and gain financial prosperity. Step number 1, take a look at your debt. Be honest with yourself. Step number 2, get yourself organized. Use some type of app, Mint or Excel, Google Sheets. Step number 3, budget yourself and stick to it. Step number 4, what method would you want to pay your debt down? Snowball or avalanche? Step number 5, if you can't pay your debt, consider some type of debt relief program. Debt America or Empowering America. Step number 6, educate yourself. Step number 7, do not add any more debt. All right, folks, that's the wrap episodes. Now, let me share my contact information with you. If you want to stay in contact with me, I'd love to stay in contact with you. Hit me up, LinkedIn, Amir Estimo, Facebook, Amir Estimo. You can also hit me at the Think Gen Wealth Facebook group that we have. Also, Instagram, the Amir Estimo. Also on Twitter, if you want to hit me up on Twitter, I think it's I haven't checked my Twitter in a while, so forgive me, but try either of these two. Either it's AECEO 0128 or the Amir Estimo. One of those two and you'll be able to find me, okay? Instagram, I already share that. Facebook, again, Amir Estimo. If you want to email me, hit me up at thankgenwealth@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you guys. Love to hear what you think about the show. Would love to hear what would you like to listen, what topics you would love for me to talk about. I'm always open up to ideas. And yes, so 2021, folks, I know 2020 was a rough year for a lot of people. And I know this episode, usually I try to keep my solo episodes anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes. This one I thought was very important because I think because of the year what we had last year in 2020, I believe 2021 is going to be a big year for a lot of people. This is going to be a bounce back year, but you got to have the mentality and the focus to do that. And I know for me, I have some goals for 2021 that I'm going to accomplish. And I'm going to share this on the podcast as I go, because this is the Journey podcast. I'm not, if whether you're paying debt or you owe $1 million in debt, so and so on, I would like to bring you onto the podcast to be able to hear your journey, because this is Think Generational Wealth, and building generational wealth is a process and it's a journey, and you have to enjoy it. Okay, folks? Much love to you guys. Thank you for tuning in to the episode. If you listen to it whole through, again, see you guys next week. Much love, positive vibes your way. Thank you.